I don't know about you, but I've been noticing a trend all over the place on social media where people are putting down music theory. So I recently saw this ad on Instagram, and it's for a well-known music education company, have a huge share of the market on teaching, piano and voice and drums and all kinds of things. And I'm interested in what people are posting, but this particular ad kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I posted a sort of a mini rant on my Instagram page about it and got a whole bunch of people who reached out and said, like, well, do you need music theory? And so I'm making this video to kind of clear up some of those details. In this video, I'm going to share with you my thoughts about this topic. Specifically, we're going to identify what even is music theory, because I kind of believe it's a bit of a bugaboo that it seems like it's some kind of thing. And then I'm going to break down some theory concepts that I think everybody needs to know, regardless of what your genre, your instrument, or your interest. And then I'm also going to break down some ideas on, what I think are the best ways to learn music theory and give you kind of a time frame for all of that. So first off, let's talk about what is music theory. I know when a lot of people think about music theory, they instantly think it's some big, thick, dusty book. I'm always joking about the dusty theory book. And, maybe you've had that experience. I think a lot of people who dog on music theory think that music theory is this big, thick book that has, maybe 4-part Bach chorale writing, that kind of thing, or that it requires a lot of writing. Or maybe you've taken like a modal counterpoint class and you're like, I don't even know what this is. Let me tell you, I have worked with so many people who have worked through music theory like that and have walked out the other end with question marks over their head. So what I would like to do is simplify the term music theory. Music theory isn't a thick, difficult book or a college course. Music theory is literacy. That's what it is. And if we think of music theory as literacy, we can think about that in several different ways. First of all, understanding music theory means you understand the nuts and bolts of what makes music. And so certain things like chords, right? Being able to know what chords are, basically how they're created, that is an important thing to not only know, but to be able to play on piano or on your instrument if you play guitar or something like that, okay? So that's one aspect of it, having a sense of understanding intervals. So understanding what the difference between, the distance between two notes is, that's another important concept. Understanding something like the circle of fifths, which is a guiding premise to the, to the concept of music in general for Western music. So again, this is something to know about. By the way, I am going to link up here to this video I made on the circle of fifths that explains all of this. All of these concepts are music theory, and they're not super difficult. And I'm guessing if you're watching this, you're probably already can do a few of these things or understand them to a certain degree. That's music theory. Another concept is having a general sense of being able to do some ear training. And what ear training means, again, there's a very broad kind of set of skills around this, but in a very general way, being able to do things like identifying an interval and being able to hear a melody and being able to sing it back, or being able to hear a melody and being able to play it on piano. I link that under the umbrella of music theory. Being able to hear whether a chord is major or minor, either, by ear and going, oh, that's major or that's minor, or to, at the very least, be able to plunk it out on the piano or on your instrument and being able to figure it out. That's music theory. All right. One other concept is the rhythmic aspect of music theory, of being able to recognize how many beats are in the bar. So is the song 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or is it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3? Again, this doesn't require a dusty textbook, right? Or a professor with like a goatee. This requires just a basic understanding of that. Now, the purpose of knowing all of this is so that you have more command and control of what's going on. So that's one of the big benefits of music theory, or what the purpose of it is it's a way of codifying what you are understanding about music. And musicians that I have come across, in my private studio or in classes that I've taught or in my membership, my online course membership, This is something that comes up a lot, is that people show up to these educational environments because they can feel the limitations of not having music theory. And maybe if you're watching this, you're sort of feeling the same thing, like there's something missing in your understanding of music. And I would say there's a very good chance that there are some music theory mysteries that need to be solved. Even for people who are avocational, so I don't like to say amateur anymore because it has a negative connotation, but avocational, so a non-professional musician, having access to music theory and some music theory knowledge really, really goes a long way. And so we're going to talk a little deeper about some of these concepts. So what music theory is it is developing an intellectual and oral understanding of what is happening musically, so that if you hear something or you're going to play something, you have something that you can say about it. That's, essentially what's going on here. It's like looking at a sentence and having somebody say, well, what's the noun? What's the verb? What's the point of that? You're understanding how music is made, or in that case, how the sentence is made, so that you can recreate it and you can play it with more understanding. So even something simple like understanding dynamic markings makes a difference, because if you don't know what dynamics are, then it means that your playing won't have very many dynamics in it. If you don't really know what makes a song in a certain key, then how are you going to be able to convey that to other musicians that you're working with? Or how are you going to have a shorthand for, understanding and being able to play what you're playing? Music theory can really help to fill in a lot of blanks and make a lot of tasks much easier. So something very simple like understanding a chord progression. And what is a chord progression? A chord progression is just a series of chords played in a row. That's all it is. So if I'm playing a C chord to a G chord to an A minor chord to an F chord, that's a chord progression. Now, why wouldn't you just memorize those chords instead of understanding how the progression is made? Well, if you understand that simple chord progression, which is also nicknamed the axis of awesome, this is a chord progression that shows up all over the place. There are literally hundreds of songs that use this chord progression. So if you understand enough theory to understand that that is the 1 chord to the 5 chord to the 6 minor chord to the 4 chord, then you'll be able to transpose it into different keys and essentially be able to play the many, many hundreds of songs that use that same chord progression. Also, music theory will help you to be able to hear that chord progression in different songs, and for you to be able to say, oh, I recognize that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel because you understand enough music theory to say, oh, I recognize that chord progression. I can play that now. So music theory really helps with that. So hopefully at this point, I've made the case for music theory. Now, is it possible to learn without music theory? Yes, it is. And I'm sure we've all seen videos like this one on YouTube. And if you've been scooting around YouTube for a little while, maybe you've even tried some of these where it's kind of pointing at which notes you're going to play. Now, at first blush, it seems like, oh, this is so great. You don't have to know any music theory in order to play. But the problem with learning this way is that you don't really know what you're playing. You're learning it essentially by eye and memorizing it. So you have no sense of being able to see what the shape is on the music. You don't necessarily have context of like, what key am I in? And also, I find that when people learn this way, it's very, very difficult to retain this music long term because all they're doing is memorizing the patterns on the piano. Now, understanding the patterns on the piano keyboard is really, really important. But if that's all you're doing, you're going to have some issues. And I have had a lot of people come and work with me one-on-one or join my online membership, The Versatile Musician, because they've tried to learn songs this way and they've found it so inefficient. Bear in mind when it comes to music theory that this is not an all or nothing situation, that it is possible to play some things sort of half by ear, but also to utilize written music or aspects of written music at the same time. And for most people who come to work with me who are not intending to go on and be, professional classical concert pianists, I tend to employ this hybrid approach. And so that's what I'm going to talk about next is what music theory skills do I actually need to have. So for the great majority of people out there, reading fully notated piano music is not going to be necessary. And this is where my beef comes with a lot of these piano methods that, especially I work with a lot of singers who are learning to play piano. And my issue with a lot of this has been that the singers have to learn this complicated piano music before they can actually work on what they need to work on. So what I tend to do with almost everybody who comes to work with me, whether they're a singer or a beginner pianist who's trying to really get started on the piano, is I tend to teach everything with understanding sort of basics of music theory. And so some of these concepts are intervals. So the biggest concept I like to lead with first is understanding the concepts of half steps and whole steps. Now, half steps and whole steps are the stuff that makes up all of the scalar material that we will ever come across, thinking of collections of whole steps and half steps. And so that right there is music theory, and it takes 2 minutes to learn and understand. And from there, you can build scales, and from the scales, you can build the chords, and we're good. So that itself is music theory. That doesn't require us to open a book at all. Another concept is to have a really clear understanding of what the difference is in different time signatures. Now, time signatures merely means how the music is organized into bars or how it feels. And so if we're thinking of, a Beatles song, when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, and to be able to say that's in 4/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or to know that there are 3 beats in the bar, or we're in 6/8 time, or we're in 12/8 time, or that there are triplets in the song, or 16th notes. This basic understanding of rhythmic knowledge actually goes a really long way too, because if you're listening to a piece of music, you can instantly say, oh, we're in 4/4 time. And that simplifies matters when you go to, play some kind of an accompaniment strategy, or some kind of a groove, or you're trying to figure out the best way to practice your chords. You can practice it in the correct time signature to kind of reinforce that concept. That right there is music theory. And then to be able to hear the differentiation between eighth notes or triplets or 16th notes, to be able to have a feeling for what the underlying rhythmic grid is in a song, is going to help you a lot too, to be able to help you lock into patterns, to be able to, again, play those accompaniment strategies, to play improvised lines. This is information that I think everybody needs to know. And I've already said how important it is that every musician on earth need to be able to play their major and minor chords in 12 keys on piano. I just think it's a non-negotiable thing. And then I think everyone needs to have an understanding of how the circle of fifths works. Again, I have a video about that, which I will link in the description box below, that explains all of that and what the use of it is. And also for people to have a sense of key signatures, so that you know that when you're in the key of C, there are no sharps or flats. When you're in the key of D, there are 2 sharps, etc. To be able to have that understanding of, what tonality is and what the notes of the major and minor scales are. This is important because, again, the harmonic pitch material that you're going to be playing is going to come from those scales. So if you have a better understanding of that, then you're going to feel much more confident playing in 12 keys. It's also going to make things like improvising easier. So if you want to play an improvised solo on a pop song, or you're writing a song and you're singing it in the key of D, that you understand all of the pitches that are available to you. So that's what I would say for pretty much everybody in music, that is the theory knowledge that I think people need to have, and then the basic ear training that goes along with that. I would say, if possible, it would also be ideal if everyone can have a basic understanding of being able to read the treble and the bass clef. Now, if you play in a rock band and that's all you do and you play everything by ear, then maybe you don't need to know written notation, and I would definitely give you a pass on that. But if possible, just a very basic understanding of being able to read the notes on the treble clef really, really helps. Because again, this is another shorthand by which you could write some ideas down very quickly and easily, to make rehearsing easier, to make it faster, and also for you to have a way to communicate what you're doing with other musicians. And this is another thing about theory. Theory cuts back on rehearsal time, on song learning time, because when you've got it in front of you and you're reading even something, just the chords or the lyrics and the chords, and you've got, the intro look at the beginning, These are all things that if you're able to notate it, then you don't have to spend hours and hours trying to learn everything by ear. It's a wonderful shortcut. Now the question remains, my final question is, what's the best way to learn music theory? And I would say there are a ton of terrific resources out there where you could learn it. And I'm going to link some of them below. You could just take some of the subjects that I've talked about and just literally do a YouTube search on some of them. I do have a couple tutorials that I've taught on those subjects, so you could definitely check those out. There are some really terrific books that you can get if you want to go the book route. And there's plenty of online courses where you could check out. I have a music theory course called Music Theory. It's not that hard on my membership, The Versatile Musician. And there I take you through a lot of these main concepts and show you how to use them. So the last question I want to answer is, how long does it take to learn music theory? In all honesty, for you to learn these basic concepts, just to understand them, it could take you 2 hours to watch some videos and take some notes and go, oh, okay, I kind of understand that concept. For you to be able to take this information and apply it, as in for you to understand how major and minor triads are constructed is one thing, being able to play them on piano is another. That could take you a couple of weeks. For you to have an understanding of, the key signatures and the circle of fifths and how that works, that could again take you, half an hour to learn. But it might take you longer to master. So again, take a couple of hours to learn some of this information, and then take a little bit of your practice time every day to master some of these concepts. And this is another thing that if you want to get this into your body, into your consciousness, into your understanding, one of the best things that you can do is to actually use these concepts in your practice time. I hope this video was helpful for you. If so, leave me a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment below and let me know what you thought music theory was. I'm always really curious about what your take is on music theory. Is it something that you feel negatively about? What was your kind of experience with understanding music theory? Or what music theory questions do you have? Because I'd love to answer them in a later video. If you want to learn more about my work, please check out my website, pianoandvoicewithbrenda.com. I have a ton of really fantastic resources there. And you can also find out about my amazing online membership called The Versatile Musician. It consists of all kinds of piano courses, musicianship courses, and solfege and rhythm, and a wonderful, quick and dirty music theory course that will teach you all of the basics of what you need to learn. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.